Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City Schools broadcast will begin momentarily. Thank you for tuning in. Your Madison City.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the City of Madison Board of Education School Board meeting for August 25th, 2022. Tonight we're going to have a special guest help us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Will Ayato come forward, please? If you'll just come right up here. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah, come on up. Thank you so much. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which is one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Ms. King, roll call, please. Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Here. Thank you, Ms. King. Board, if you'll review the agenda, I'll need a motion and a second to proceed.
So move.
Second. A motion by Ms. Lessmann and a second by Mr. Cummings. All those in favor of the agenda in front of you, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The agenda passes. Tonight is the scheduled first budget hearing as required by statute in the state of Alabama. And I would like to call Ms. LaVerne Williams, our CSFO, forward, and we will open up the budget hearing.
Good evening, Board and Dr. Nichols. Tonight I'm going to present the 2023 budget. I do want to mention that we do have forms in the back of the room on both sides of if the public actually wants to make any comments or has any questions, please feel free to fill one of these forms out and then get it back to me. You can leave it on the table at the end of the board meeting, but please give me these forms by the 2nd of September because I will need all of this information before the second public hearing on the 6th. So Madison City is the 12th largest school system in Alabama. In 2021, we were funded for 11,512 students. And then this past year in 2022, we were funded for 11,888 students. Currently, as of August 19th, we have 12,093 students currently enrolled in Madison City Schools. In Madison City Schools, we have 12 schools, 7 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, and 1 pre-K center. Madison City Schools personnel, we're the 3rd largest employer in the city. We have 1,416 employees, not including our substitutes, 880 certified staff, which includes our administration as well as our teachers. And over 50% of those have degrees of master's or higher. We have 536 support personnel, and then we have over 2,000 personnel contracts each year. The top 10 Alabama school districts with the largest growth in 2022 for Madison City Schools were ranked number 4 in this area. And that's behind Limestone County, which has their growth actually includes virtual students. And then also Baldwin County, Shelby County, and then of course Madison City Schools. And so everyone is glad to be in Madison City Schools, and there's many reasons why. Madison City has the 3rd highest district. We're the 3rd district with national board certified teachers in the state, and that's behind Jefferson County and Hoover City. Out of our 2022 graduates, 60% of our students were offered $61 million in scholarships. Madison City, we've always ranked an A score on all of our district and school state report cards. We have 86 languages that we speak in the district, and then we're ranked number 2. The number 2 district in the state by niche. As far as the transportation department, can we go back to the last? Not there, but if you go back to the beginning of the slide, if you exit out of this one, this is not right. Yes. Try the, yes. You go to the transportation.
Mr. Payon has hidden.
I'll actually just talk about it then. Okay, so as far as our transportation department, we transport 6,400 students daily. We have 202 routes per day. We have an additional 1,400 trips annually, field trips. Our weekly costs, our fuel costs are $13,500. And then our average, we pretty much average 900,000 miles annually for our transportation department. CMP for our child nutrition department. We are currently at 40% of our enrollment participation for the lunchroom program. In 2022, we've served about 550,000 breakfasts and 1.2 million lunches. And in the CNP department, we have a budget of about $7 million. For Madison City Schools, for our free and reduced numbers, in 2019, prior to COVID, we had about 20% of our free and reduced. For 2021 and 22, because of COVID, most of our breakfast and lunch was free. And so we really had a hard time trying to get the forms in to see if we could have a free and reduced lunches. But for 2023, we're actually back to the 23%. And so that's a really great thing because we're kind of going back to where we were in 2019. Thank you. The budget hearing requirements. So we have to hold 2 public hearings. So the first one is today. Our second one will be held on the 6th of September. The hearings have to be conducted during a regular scheduled board meeting. It has to be in a convenient time and place, and it needs to be publicized. Our purpose of all of our hearings are to enhance the planning process. We want to show transparency and accountability for all of our stakeholders, and we want to make sure to inform the community. And so that was, we do have the forms, like I mentioned, in the back earlier. The next thing would be the budget process. And so all of these items that are listed here on the slide are important in the budget process, but everything is geared towards student enrollment. And so everything drives, like for instance, teachers and support staff is driven by student enrollment. Of course, after we have those in place, we have the other items that we need to put into our budget. And so as far as funding, we put our anticipated state and federal revenues into the budget. We have capital that we put in there. Our classroom support, which involves our teacher materials, student materials, as well as our library enhancement, technology, money. We also have, of course, our auxiliary services, which is the CMP department and our transportation. And then we include our debt in the budget as well. And so the main purpose of this budget is to make sure that our expenses are justified and identifiable. And we want to make sure that we maintain adequate fund balances. So next is, we want to make sure to align Madison City strategic initiatives with our budget. And so after ESSER money is gone, we will continue to offer or provide services that are listed above. So we will continue to offer summer school for those that are identified with learning loss, after school tutoring. We'll make sure that all students still have a one-to-one device in the district. We will provide highly qualified professional development for all of our teachers. And we will implement additional safety measures for all of our schools and add counselors to support our mental health initiative. So a historical look at Madison City Schools just over the past few years. 2010, we went through a recession and proration. In 2020, we, of course, had a pandemic and we had a lot of unexpected expenditures. And so we had to deal with virtual learning, ordering cleaning supplies, hotspots, and so on and so forth. 2022 was where the federal government sent a lot of CARES money for us to combat COVID and so on and so forth. And then for future years for 2023 and after, we just want to make sure in our budget that we include all of our inflation costs that seem to be increasing. Our utility costs have been increasing. And so we have included all of that in our 23 budget. So our budget highlights for 2023. So we have new additions for the 23 budget, and we have some, our local revenue has increased, as well as just foundation funding for the year, which we always have an increase in arrears. This year, we do have other expenditures that we have to deal with. We have a textbook adoption because of the Literacy Act. We had salary expenses that we had to include in this budget. And then we have additional mental health and counselors and SROs that we anticipated in this budget. And of course, next year, we want Journey to open, and we have put operating costs in the budget for that. Underfunded mandates. So these are items that are not funded by the state or federal government. So we do have to use our local revenues for items listed above. For special ed program, we have more teachers than we're funded for that we have to pay out of local money. Contracted services, bus aides, transportation, as well as nurses, they're only funded 80%, so we have to supplement the rest of that. Reading coaches for our Literacy Act, we supply those, and then any additional counselors that we feel that we need in our system, we supply those as well. This is our 2023 budget. We have a total of about $186 million, and I'm going to go over each fund source in more detail and speak about what it is that we spend out of each of these funds. So the general fund, most of our revenue in this fund is from state programs like the foundation, as well as transportation, and then local taxes are included, like property tax, sales tax, and so on and so forth. And so our expenses out of this, of course, are salaries, substitutes, benefits. That's about 71% of our expenditures. We have utilities in this, contracted services and equipment purchases are included in our general fund. This is a breakdown of our local revenues. This is a conservative increase in our local revenues, and we've increased most of the items by 10%. We have the TVA line item is 1% because that stays very constant, so we only put 1% there. And then for other, we have, for TVA it's 0%, and for other it's 1%, and that is just a constant revenue that we get in for our preschool tuition, as well as Medicaid reimbursements. Next is the special revenue fund, and this includes or encompasses our access distance learning program, as well as our federal programs like special ed, child nutrition, and federal programs. ESSER is also included in this, as well as our DODATA grants and our public funds from our local schools. Debt service, this pretty much reflects our annual debt payment, and so our total outstanding debt for Madison City is $261 million. But for 2023, we have about $14 million for debt. The capital projects fund pretty much encompasses all of our major projects that we've incorporated in the budget. So for 2023, our HVAC renovations that we have planned to do, we want to finish and complete the Bob Jones DD wing, finish the Journey Middle School, and then we're planning on working on our pre-K renovation. Also, in 2022, we used this fund to fund the lighting and the parking lot at Bob Jones. The next fund is the Expendable Trust Fund, and this fund deals with most of our non-public accounts or booster accounts. And so this deals with all of our secondary schools, Discovery, Liberty, Bob Jones, and James Clemens. And that is my presentation. Do you have any questions?
Board discussion? Thank you for detailing such a very thorough process and plan there. I'm glad to see that the health of the pig has improved since 2020.
Yes, sir.
I know you mentioned it, but, I think just a key thing to always remember on the budgets is, funded versus enrolled. I think our difference is, we're funded for 11,886, but as of this week, I think we have enrolled 12,093.
Yes.
There's a delta there. And
Yes.
that's the way, of course, our system works in this state. But so that is certainly a challenge for a system like this that grows. There are growing pains of being a great system. And,
Yes, sir.
I greatly appreciate the financial challenge we have there to try to balance that discrepancy out. So, very good job by your team in putting together this plan to this point.
Thank you so
I
much.
believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Williams, that delta for this year, if we freeze where we are, which we probably won't, is probably somewhere around $1.7 million. So, used to, and before the state changed the formula to reimburse us for those funds, that delta could get as high as 2.5 or 3 million. So I'm glad the funding formula is different,
Yes.
but it's still up there.
Yeah, we're
Probably
still-
$1.7 million where we're sitting today, with enrollment of almost 12,100. So they average that. And I know the board knows this, just to remind the board and the public, they take a 3-year rolling average of your enrollment. And so they average what they're going to give you. It's not actually based upon what you had last year. And so as you remember, and I think as William showed us at one time, that delta dropped significantly during COVID across the state. And so that average hurt us to have that change. Now we're back up to normal, and we're adding 300 or 400 a year. If we'd had that year in there and that average, we would be reimbursed at a little higher. So as we move along, the goal, well, there's not a goal because you can't do this, but the perfect world is that you grow the same number every year, and that consistency of average then helps you to get the funding that you need. But that never happens in a perfect world. But there's still that delta there.
I appreciate you taking the time to, Ms. Williams invited the board members to come in, and she walked us through the process and shed light on how you sit down with each department and how you work with them to get through the process, because the entire budget is to support the students' education and as a backdrop to the strategic plan. And so I appreciate, obviously, all the time that you and every department does to meet those goals, but then in the middle of the budgeting process to invite us in and educate us on the process and go in depth on each of your charts. And I really appreciate that.
No problem. Thank you.
Anything else, board? All right. Well, that will close tonight's budget hearing, and we will have, please, if you have comments or questions, as Ms. Williams said, there are forms. She will gather those up, and we will have our second and final budget hearing at our September 6th meeting. We'll now move into presentations. Dr. Nichols.
Mr. President, members of the board, I would ask Dr. Dooley to come at this time. She has several folks with her to give us an overview of our EL summer camp.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols, board. Good evening, everyone. This is probably one of my most favorite presentations during the school year because of all the excitement that surrounds our EL camps. And I just wanted to tell a special thank you to Dr. Nichols, Dr. Donaldson, board, EL camp directors and teachers, our transportation staff, our CNP staff, Lee Shaw. The list is probably too long to name, but there are a lot of people involved in the success of this camp, in any camp in the district, and so I wanted to thank everyone. Let's get the next slide. You can see on this slide the history and the background of the EL camp, and I just like to bring this back because this just reminds us that we started as a tiny 1 grade level camp in 2009, transitioning our pre-K students to kindergarten, those who were EL, and now we have grown to include all elementary and all of the secondary students who are ranked in need of support in language acquisition. So this year we have served 156 EL students who were selected based on the multiple ranking criteria. And we were able to sustain funding to sustain secondary camp We did lose local funding through SAIL grant because there was ESSER money available when ESSER funding is over. So we'll be pursuing different streams of revenue here, trying to see if we can write more grants. We were able to compete for a Nova Foundation grant that supported our secondary camp, and we're hoping to maybe continue that. And this is one of my favorite slides. It's always given us a pause when we do the data just to see if we did it right this year. And again, our teachers and students and camp administrators did the magic. It was just beautiful. This year we did an experiment. We have always used STAR because it was part of the SAIL framework. We still continued SAIL framework because we like the accountability that gives that comes with assessment that tells our teachers if instruction is going in the right direction, if we need to regroup for next summer. But we went a different direction after much discussion and looking at standards and what the camp goal is. We decided that the main focus of the camp has always been language acquisition. And we have already used the tool in the district, which is called TEL, which is Test of English Language Learning by Pearson. That is used by our EL teachers during the school year to progress monitor our language acquisition. So we decided to try and use this tool this school year in the summer and see how it works. And we are proud to report that it actually worked pretty good. We had our EL teachers who helped us do the pre-test and post-test. It was a big team effort, and we had to figure out some challenges there, but we did see some good growth there that we had to also look at how do we interpret this growth in terms of 1 month. So we looked at all of the elementary students as a group and saw that 1 year worth of growth is worth about 12 points. So our students in elementary camp were able to grow 4.5 points, which is about a third of a school year or 3.3 months. So this is very comparable to what STAR delivered in terms of reading and math, which we still continued, but we continued it through the lens of language acquisition. And when you look at secondary, that was actually the most amazing thing to me. I have never seen secondary kids outperform elementary just because the nature of the content, but we specifically focused on language acquisition. And I think the success also of this camp is the teachers who started the inaugural camp virtually. We were the only ones in the state actually starting that, and I think that speaks to the quality of our teachers. Those are the same teachers that continued with students, and we had some students actually returning because it takes years to get language under your belt. And they were able to grow our students 5.8 points. And secondary growth in 1 year actually was 4.87 points. So they actually produced more than 1 year of growth. And I think I will just put a little side note here. Secondary kids don't always take testing seriously, and I think our camp students did. So that's probably the difference. Between the school year, it's a little more challenging to convince them to progress monitor to the top of their potential during the school year. But here, the students really did a great job. We also did some parent surveys and student surveys, and we had great satisfaction. We didn't get all fives, but out of, on the scale 1 to 5, we asked parents to rank how satisfied they are with the camp, and 5 was extremely satisfied, 4 was satisfied, and we had high 4s and 5s in all of the areas for elementary and secondary camp. Had some great feedback from the students. They enjoyed practicing grammar and speaking activities, and they were able to take it back to school. And we also measure students' self-confidence because we know this is one area that students year after year tell us they grow in. And again, we saw 67% growth in elementary and 52% growth in secondary and self-confidence. And we're actually doing some things with the Nova Foundation grant this year with the EL students and counselors, with the EL population as a whole to continue growing that during the school year. But with that, I would like to invite our elementary camp students and teachers to the podium, and Ms. Jessica Penninger will talk about a couple of things from the elementary camp standpoint, and then we'll transition to the secondary camp, and we have Ms. Jane Herndon, who was the camp director in the secondary camp. So I think there's a lot of excitement among students that they would like to share.
Thank you for having us. Got a couple of my friends here with me. Thank you to everybody that participated in any role, any capacity with making our campus success. Thank you for coming to our Spotlight Day. We appreciate that. Huge shout out to Dr. Dooley and Dr. Scrimpsher and Dr. West for all of their help. Couldn't have done it without all of their support. So our elementary camp had over 110 students representing about 14 different languages in kindergarten through 5th grade. Our camp had 18 teachers, 1 receptionist, 1 paraprofessional, aide, and 1 administrator. We had 97% daily attendance rate, and we were able to present about 80 hours of instruction. This is just for the month of June, 4 days a week, and about 32 hours of enrichment opportunities. And I think you got to see a lot of those exciting opportunities, but I'd like for you to hear it firsthand from some of our teachers and our students. So I will pass it over to them.
So the elementary camp academics, we were in activities. We built those off our WIDA standards, and we took a focus really on reading, writing, listening, speaking, and math. And we used those to build our relationships with our students, build vocabulary, and boost their confidence in our students. And some of those ways.
Good evening, everybody. So the mission statement for our year camp was to transform the academic achievements and self-confidence and life trajectory of EL students with academic and language needs. For months, my colleagues and I met to develop lessons plans and meaningful experiences to help our students not only to develop academically, but also in the language journey. We align our lessons and our instructions with WIDA standards as well as with content core standards. Our lessons aim to develop all and address all 4 language domains of listening, reading, and writing and speaking, both in the language and math. Our daily routine consisted of an hour and a half of language instructions, as well as an hour and a half of math instructions, also included 1 hour of enrichment activities. During these activities, we presented mostly STEMs, science, and with the introduction of Kiwi grades.
My favorite field trip was the Cook Museums because we learned a lot about animals and extinct animals from a long time ago. My favorite Kiwi grade was the digging dinosaurs' bones because we learned a lot of the dinosaur stuff, and it was really fun.
Y'all saw those when y'all came.
Good evening. I'm Jane Herndon. I had the great opportunity to be the camp director for the secondary camp, which this was only our 3rd year in existence. And as you can see, we had 44 campers. We had 4 different languages represented. And we just want to thank everyone who was able to come to Spotlight Day, everyone who helped us out, our bus drivers, our custodian. We just had a fantastic staff and our amazing teachers as well. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Miss Adrienne King, who is at Discovery, and she's going to tell you guys more about the academic side of our camp.
Good evening. I've had the privilege of working with this camp since the inauguration of it, so that's super exciting. This year, as part of our camp academics, we focused on language acquisition, sentence structures, and math. All of these were done through games. We were provided 84 hours of academic instruction. The use of games as part of our instruction was a great way for us to engage all students and allow them not to feel like they were still in school, but learn as well. 2 of the games that really pushed our students to use their language acquisition skills were headbands and Would You Rather. In our headbands game, students had to describe a word without using that word, and then other students had to guess what that word was. This allowed our students to use their vocabulary. In Would You Rather, it required students to have to use their sentence structures to explain why they chose what they preferred. With camp being only 4 weeks, we were able to see growth in our students, and we knew that was because they were having fun. So to showcase that, I brought along Ayato, who I have had for 2 years in summer camp, and he currently is in my 8th grade math class.
My favorite things in camp are field trip to Cook Museum. We learned many animals' habitats. It was very interesting. Especially my favorite was cave. It has limestones. It was not real, but it looks very real. Second, when we got free time, we went outside and we had very good time because we played soccer, basketball, and frisbee with my friends. Third, we played Bigfoot game. The game rule is some people hide Bigfoot sheets, other people have to find the Bigfoot sheets. It was very fun. Finally, we made s'more. First, we made box. Inside of box, we attached aluminum foil for making it. Second, put s'more in it. That's it. We enjoyed making it. It was really yummy. It was very nice camp. I want to join summer camp again. Thank you.
All right, so as you get here, and as hopefully you can see by the pictures, we had just a fantastic summer. And I also wanted to thank the Madison City Fire and Police Departments for coming out. They love the drones and just getting to see all the big tools and fun gadgets. So that's the end of our presentation. Again, thank y'all so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dooley. Questions? I
Just
will
a comment
say,
and just, I'm sorry.
go ahead, sir.
It's always a highlight of this board's time when we get to go to EL camp. It's just an outstanding opportunity, and the services that you guys are continuing to provide for our students, even during the summertime, is amazing.
Dr. Dooley, board, just a couple of things. One, we've gained in the last 2 years, how many EL students?
A little over 100 students,
Okay.
which was over 25% growth for us.
They were very lean last year. I give them credit. Superintendent didn't give a lot of units away last year. So we've added 3 units this year
Yes, sir.
to balance out across the district the increase that we've had. We try to keep about a 30 to 35 student ratio. We try not to split if we can help it too much, or try not to decrease a school where they have less than at least one full-time teacher. So we did add a few units this year to address the growth that we've had in our EL students. Also, Dr. Dooley has created a professional learning unit for all of our administrative certified staff to broaden their understanding of EL. I know that none of you have to have those, but maybe AASB ought to give you credit, but we will send you the information, and if you would like to drop in on those training sessions, we'll make sure you know when they are. So it'll just help our administrative staff have a deeper knowledge and a better understanding of what we use, what our EL teachers do to help our kids acclimate to language. And they do it better than anybody else in this state, I promise you. Our rates are as high, if not higher, than everyone else's. But it's also a combination. We're very blessed that we have moms and dad at home when they move here that help us to do that. You know, it's an effort between the school and the mom and the parents at home and communities. And so we're very blessed to have the staff that we have. So thank you, Dr. Dooley.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols.
To second what Travis has, Mr. Cummings has said, the excitement in our summer programs in Madison City between the staff and the administrators and the students is always just palpable, and we love being invited, and just always make sure you include us. We love to walk around and just see the fruits of your labor, and that's the amazing thing is it doesn't seem like labor. I mean,
Right.
It seems that the teachers are as recharged and excited as the students, and we just really appreciate everything that you guys do and the time that you give to these students during the summer. Anything else, board? Dr. Nichols?
Mr. President, members of the board, I'll ask Dr. Jaw to come forward. She's going to give us an overview of the personnel department work, employment this summer.
Good evening, Board and Dr. Nichols. I just want to give you a recap of the hiring and staffing that we've done during this past summer. We've been quite busy in the personnel department. We got an early start this year, thanks to Dr. Nichols. We were able to go ahead. We sent out our yearly preference forms to our employees February the 15th. And so we sent that out to employees. And so we were able to find out from our employees whether they wanted to, what their preference was for this upcoming year. And so we were able to find out from them what they were going to do. And so we were able to go ahead and post those particular jobs. And so we found out, and we ended up having 82 resignations. We had 9 leave of absences, 7 retirements, 16 non-renewals, and then 44 transfers. And then we ended up hiring 190 employees. And just to kind of put that in perspective, that 190 employees, that was 114 certified positions and 76 non-certified or support staff. And just to put that in perspective, from 2021, we had what we were able to, please don't go to that next. If you go back to, yes, please. Thank you. Just to put that into perspective, that was 33 retirements from 2021. For the 2021 school year, there were 33 retirements and 94 resignations. And, that was for the 2020-21 school year. And then for the 21-22 school year, we had 12 retirements and then 93 resignations. And and we weren't able to look up the employments that we had for those 2 years. But so that was what we had for those particular years. And then, like I said, this year, you can see what we have for the 22 school year. Just historically over the past years for certified for 20 school year 2020, for certified staff for hiring, we hired 142 employments. Out of that was 104 certified, and then non-certified was 38. For the year 2021 was 95 certified, and then 45 non-certified, for a total of 140. And then for this year, like I said, was 114 certified, and then 76 non-certified, for a total of 190. So we had posted 190 jobs posted for this year. Applicants for this year for elementary certified jobs, out of the elementary jobs that we had posted, there, as you can imagine, for a lot of the jobs that we have posted, many of them for elementary jobs, we may have 100 to 120 to 150 applicants that apply for a particular job. Sometimes you may have that many. Sometimes you may have 25 applicants that apply. Just depends on the job. If it is a temporary job that is posted, you may only have 25 applicants that apply. But if it is a permanent job, you may have 120 to 150 applicants that apply. But the average for elementary jobs, it was 77 applicants that applied. For secondary jobs, you can see that there are not as many applicants for a secondary job. So the average for applicants for a secondary job were 33. For the hard to fill jobs, you can see we actually hired 24 special education teachers this year. And there were 26 actual jobs 26 special education jobs that were actually posted this year. We do still have 2 positions that have not been filled yet, and you'll see in just a minute what those are. But the average applicants that were for special education jobs were 16. And again, special education jobs are just like the elementary. For elementary, you may have for the elementary jobs, you may have, for special education, you may have 23 applicants that apply, but for the secondary special education jobs, you may have as few as 5 or 6. So it just really just depends. But again, the average number of applicants is 16. Now we'll move on to our support staff. And you can see support staff is where we're having some difficulty and where we're struggling with support staff. So with support staff, for the number of jobs that we had posted, for custodians, the average number of applicants that we had for 7 jobs that we had posted was 3. For CMP, we had 13 jobs that were posted, but the average number of applicants we had was 6. For transportation, we had 7 jobs that were posted, but the applicant pool was the average was 2. Excuse me. And then for paraprofessionals, we had 16 jobs that were posted, but the average was 11. Here are the positions that we still currently have open. We have 5 positions. We actually have a total number of 8 positions that are currently open. 3 we just opened, as Dr. Nichols just pointed out just a minute ago, the EL positions. We just opened up on August the 18th, the 3 EL positions because of growth. But the other positions, the other 5 positions we have currently open are the Discovery, you can see those listed here, but there are the 2 special ed positions. We also, one of the positions will be closing tonight or closing tomorrow because we're hiring someone tonight. But those are the positions that we have open. But then you see that the classified positions, we have quite a few open. And then, board, you have been asking, we've been looking at this for many, many years. I thought maybe you wanted to look at our makeup for ethnicity at the beginning of the year. We usually look at this at the end of the year, but this is our ethnicity at the beginning of the year. So this is where we are currently. Not including this board meeting, but currently as of last board meeting.
How do we compare to the last few years?
This is actually looking pretty good. I mean, we've done some really good hiring this summer, and so we're actually looking really good. And always looking to, as we do recruiting this year, we'll do look at going into, looking at our minorities and doing some hiring, as we always have. And so, and looking at our, going to our minority colleges, our HBCUs and at Oakwood and A&M and, doing that same type of thing this year.
And the goal is to have the teacher population match our student population. Correct?
Exactly. And so we're coming very close to at each school, obviously. Yes.
How would this compare with the community demographics, or would you know that?
I don't know. Yeah,
okay.
I will have to. I don't know that right off the top of my head.
One of the things the federal court reviews on this is not necessarily the population of the community, but the population of folks who are certified by the State Department each year. What is the percentage of minority candidates that are eligible to be hired and have a certification in teaching that are produced by the colleges. As the board's aware, and we can get this number for you, at one time, about 6 or 7 years ago, that was about 18%. So about 18% statewide of all folks who received a teacher certification in a year were African American. The government then had to figure out what that area number was. So for instance, in your urban areas, that number could be greater if you had a university there. However, at the same time, you could have schools such as Madison County, Huntsville City, and other districts that were all under court orders and were vying to try to meet the standard of the court for that. So that made your pool. So one of the things we have to do, and we'll do, is go back and take those applicant numbers that we have, and we can actually see what the percentage of our pool available across ethnicity that we have. Mr. Sanderson and his folks have worked with us as we present that to the court each year and provide them that information. So we've tried to be proactive, Dr. John and her staff, in recruiting, going out, because that's the goal of the federal judge, is for us to do that and show the intent for us to do that. We also changed the hiring process several years ago, as you remember, board, so that we felt like it was fairer and gave a better result on reaching out. And so there's a balance there in the hiring process of trying to meet those percentages that Judge Hakala has set forth, and then being able to present that data. So when Dr. Jha talks about that, there's a lot of work that goes into that recruiting. It's a competitive, going out early, being competitive in our hiring process. So I certainly appreciate the work that's gone into helping us do that. And then once you have that number, the judge will want you to create that number across every school. So that's what your goal is, give or take a certain percentage. They evaluate that information. And so we've been doing that for 3 years. We now have good data in place and a process in place, and we can now go towards asking Judge Hakala to release us from the oversight that the court has on us in our relations to Madison County.
One more question. So you're saying but we go with the teachers, it's how many are certified by the state, that demographic, I guess.
We start with that pool.
That's okay.
What does the state each year in
Okay.
their certification process, what do their demographics look like for Alabama? Even though we may recruit outside Alabama, that's kind of the pool.
Okay.
And then we have to also analyze how that pool is affected regionally.
Okay.
What is our pool? What does it look like from Athens State, UNA, Alabama A&M, Oakwood University? What does that pool look like? Because you could have a large college of education at Auburn. You could have a large college of education at Alabama State, but you could have a small college of education at Oakwood. And even though you have that historically black college, the number of folks coming out of there that are getting certified that create that pool.
Okay. Well, and in case anybody wants to know, for the Madison demographics, the African American is 13.9%, and then white was 76.03. Just FYI. Thank you for that.
And I would say, that very first chart is pretty telling. Of the one chart number 4, where Dr. Josh showed 77 average applicants for the elementary job. Mr. Jones, we've been around a long time. Used to post an elementary job, 350?
400
350 applicants for an elementary position 6 or 7 years ago.
Sometimes 400.
Sometimes 400. And secondary probably 100.
100.
Some more than others. Math always ran 40, science 40 or 50. Social studies, you could have 250 applicants for social studies position. Now you get 30. So the pool of folks going in to education is shrinking. And so I do say that as you go back and look at these numbers Dr. Jha has given us about the retirements, I think we've been able to ease that by taking full advantage of the salary increases that the state provided, and you as a board providing the full depth of that for our staff. That's helped us to maybe delay some folks who might have retired, keeping folks here, and you also allowed us, board, to create a salary schedule that was competitive, even though it's still hard for some of these positions, transportation and others, and we've still got some work to do on that. It's still a challenge. I did hear on the Today Show this morning that the Great Resignation is now called the Great Return. Folks left thinking there was a better job, and they got over there and found that the grass is still grass in the other pasture. And so we've had that happen some. We've had folks who left us for that sign that says $15 an hour at McDonald's to find out that that's a little different maybe. But we've got some work to do on that, I believe. But Dr. John and her team and our admin, I can't say enough about that they got out early in the hiring season. And Mr. Jones and I did that for a long time. We know how important that is. And they did a tremendous job of getting applicants and creating a pool.
Anything else?
So you read about the teacher shortage. It seems like, due to your efforts, really, doesn't seem like we've really been stung by that too bad at all.
Okay. Not as much, no. It's the support staff that but teachers, no.
That's kudos to y'all.
Yeah.
One more question on the first slide. You said there was 7 retirements, and then in the past we've had like 30 in the past couple of years. Was that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that was just in 2021.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think that's probably
But 30 to 7. That's
yeah. I think 2021 was
yeah.
That's an outlier, I would think. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'll just say, board, as a back note to this, Dr. Jha and our staff are working on, as we fill the positions at Journey. You mentioned retirements, Ms. Lessmann. One of the things that we have to do is make sure when we fill those positions, we balance that school. We don't, you don't want to put an entirely brand new 0 to 5 years of experience staff together. Now, that might be the most energetic building if you do that, but they'll also all retire in 25 years on the same weekend. And so you want to balance as you look at who wants to go there and positions you fill. And so we met the other day and had a planning session on moving forward in that process so that we can begin to give that staff to Dr. Stewart.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Jones. Dr. Nichols?
Mr. President, final presentation is Mr. Gunner with the capital plan.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols and board. Glad to be here and present this year's capital plan for approval. Especially want to thank Mr. Jones. He co-chaired this year, and he's one of the most thorough people I've ever been around. So this had a lot of thought put into it. I appreciate it. I also like to thank our committee members for their feedback and help. So each year, the Department of Education requires us to provide a board-approved capital plan, and this year it goes in on September 21st. It's a fluid plan, meaning that if it goes in on September 21st, it's downloaded onto the website. Anytime after that, it can change. The district can decide to eliminate a project. I don't see that happening for us, or they can add a project. All this is a plan, and it gives the state an accurate estimate on, say, hey, this is what kind of money's flying around at every district across the state. And so it kind of helps them to do that. It lets them know what we do with our money too. So some of the important dates right quick, and you can see them right here. I won't go through them all. So we had our first meeting on August 5th. We met in person. We throw a draft out there of some things that our district thinks important. It also looks at the last plan. Some of it comes from that, and then we go from there. We take suggestions and recommendations and keep drafting something until this product comes out. So, next slide. This is the committee. This is just a list of the names that are on the committee. It's got board members, some board members, Dr. Nichols, Mr. Terrell. It has a lot of the district administrators on it, principals, representation from the city of Madison, and we have parents. We've asked some of our teacher of the years to be a part of it this year, so it's so we can get an idea from the broad spectrum of stakeholders. Next slide. All right, so we begin our process by looking at these three main things here, and I don't need to read over them. I'm sure that you can do that. I would like to say that that in Madison, we still have to consider growth is a pretty good priority, and our instructional programs, and we look at all of our buildings and what kind of shape they're in now. We want to make sure that our older buildings have the same environment as close as we can, since we have some new ones going up. So all that matters to our district in our planning. And another thing is the objective to come out of this is a plan that is as accurate we can get it when we submit it, and knowing that it could change. Sometimes funding changes that comes from the state, which might change our whole plan. That did kind of happen to us the last couple of years of PSCA funding and ETF money. And started coming in, we said, oh, let's do this, let's do that. So that's what would change the plan and makes it fluid like that. Next slide. It should have been a copy of the plan. No, didn't get that. No copy of the spreadsheet. There we go. So this is the plan that we came up with. The first, it's a little bit more descriptive than what goes into the state. This third column that says description is the best description that we can give. That doesn't go to the state in the plan that you log on the website and see. That column's not even in there. So you'll have a ranking, you'll have a school site, you'll have the estimate, you'll have the intended funding year, and by that I mean is that's when you hope you have the money to do it, and that's the year that you say, hey, I hope that by 2023, like we look at number 9, that we can fund this intercom upgrade at these schools. So that's what the funding year stands for, and you'll have a category, and then if you know where the funding's coming from, you can put it there. Most of the time, and most plans will have unknown, simply for the fact that we don't know yet where it's coming from, especially as we move forward from 2022 or this past year. So the first 8 are on there are underway. It's in some form or fashion. That could be an owner-architect agreement that the board approved and we're talking to an architect, or that could be like number 1, Journey. We're nearing the end of the construction. So all of those are in progress in a way. 9 through 21 are what we hope to be able to fund. In 2023, it's what our committee says, hey, these are important, and it's hopefully something we can address during that year. Like I said, something else may come up, or we could say we don't need to do one of them, whatever it is. But that's why the plan is fluid. So that's pretty much the plan that we have, that we came up with. We're seeking approval on tonight that we can post on the 21st. Another target is to try to get this done around the time for the budget amendment readings or whatever, the budget readings, so that can kind of have something to do with how they develop that. So that's our plan. I'm open to any questions that I might can answer about the plan.
Thank you for you and Mr. Jones for working through the capital plan this year. I I was looking at the 2022 pieces, and are all of those have funding attached to them. So is all that going to be in the budget? Those items, Dr. Nichols or Mr. Gunner?
That's the goal. 2022 is still here. So by the end of the year, that's the goal. That's the plan.
And like you say, some of them are just owner-architect agreements. Some of them
Correct.
aren't out for bid yet. I mean, so there's a lot of unknowns there, even in 2022.
Exactly.
And I think the other noteworthy thing for a board, I know you've reviewed this, but for the community, is that we have the new elementary school and the high school additions slated in 24, I believe. Let me find that. Is that correct? 24.
Right. New elementary school is number 24.
25, I guess.
And then the additions might be worded a little bit different. As where we have the STEM athletic wing, STEM, which is the science and technology side of it, and then for let's see,
29 is JC, the expansion in addition to the restrooms there, and then you have the elementary at 24.
right.
Yeah. And do we still so obviously by our growth, the elementary school is a higher priority than the high school additions, and we think this 23 date, the 24 date, I'm sorry, this 24 date, is that breaking ground?
Yes.
Okay.
That's not finished. That's breaking ground. That's getting designed this year and getting ready. And if all that lines up with how the area around the school and the roads and all that, and then are we able to begin that process?
And I think it's also important to note that this is just a plan. Many of these items, really all of these items, except for as you pointed out, Mr. Gunner, 1 through 8, there aren't necessarily, well, it's some there, I think there are probably owner architects or agreements, or maybe some bids or something on some of these other items, but these are not set in stone by any means.
Correct.
And certainly either unfortunately or fortunately, the estimates aren't set in stone either.
That's true.
And so these aren't, this doesn't tie the hands of a future board. These are estimates that you've taken from the community leaders and your school leaders and the committee.
Right.
Mr. Gunther, a few years ago in the capital plan, it was a goal to get rid of all the old HVAC equipment that had the R22 refrigerant in it. How are we on that progress?
All right. Here's what's left, because of you'll see where we're addressing a lot of it on 4 and 5 and 6, and then when we renovate West Madison, that will take care of that school too. So central office is still, majority of them here are still R22, and then Discovery has a little bit in the new wing. So we're getting there. We're getting pretty close.
Thank you.
Anything else, board?
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work. Dr. Nichols, do we have any other presentations this evening?
No, sir, Mr. President.
With no other presentations, now will be the time for public comments. This is the time when members of the public can address the board and other members of the public, and we just ask that you've signed in with Ms. King and that you're respectful in your comments, as there may be those in the public that have alternate opinions. Ms. King?
All right. Hi, and good evening. On the 18th, I appeared with my wife and another parent, and we expressed our respect for your commitment to supporting transplanted families by keeping kids in the classroom. And we shared how you could do that. Ventilation and portable HEPA filters are recommended and proven. The minority of Georgia schools that addressed both ventilation and filtration saw 48% fewer cases. If we observe key parameters like hitting 6 air changes per hour or more, we stand to gain an 82.5% reduction in exposure and transmission. We also reiterated that ionization is not among the recommendations out there. CDC, SRA, and EPA regard ionization as separate, emerging technology in contrast to what they do recommend. Boeing right here in Huntsville said ionization is ineffective. Chemists have found that it alters indoor air chemistry and may increase harmful byproducts. And there are members of the SRA Epidemic Task Force who have been outspoken against it. And finally, ionization is adding something to the air instead of subtracting it. There's no study to tell us whether piping ions into occupied spaces and letting them interact with the developing lung tissues of our children for their full youth is okay. Ventilation and HEPA filtration pose none of those risks. They come recommended, and the peer-reviewed studies keep coming out, telling us just how they work. It would take time for us to look into collaborating with you on a ventilation plan, so we've presented in your packet a HEPA filtration plan with a good, better, and best option for risk reduction. The good is 2 small HEPA filters per room, set to medium at 43 dBA per unit of noise, 7 air changes per hour. This would be $1.1 million in the initial year. Over a 3-year span, the $2 million for sustainment and procurement. The best is ironically cheaper than the middle of the road. 3 small portable HEPA filters for each room set to low. This is quieter at 36 dBA of noise per unit, more energy efficient at 111 kilowatts, more effective at a little over 8 air changes per hour, and gets better room coverage at $1.7 million initially, and over 3 years, including procurement and sustainment, $2.9 million. We've selected models that appear to afford the best risk reduction and lowest noise. We've factored in the vendor's school discount, and the vendor offers a 3-year warranty. All of these meet or exceed the recommendation of Bill Banfleth, who is the former president of SRA and the chair of the SRA Epidemic Task Force, so he would know. Meet or exceed his recommendation for 6 air changes or more for schools. If you worked at CDC, nobody would require you to go and infect yourself with SARS-2 every few weeks, and it's not good enough for my kids either. I want my kids to go to school here, and I'm not resigned to the recurring sickness and disruption and suffering and death that we are seeing in our country and state. I'm determined to see us do everything we know we can do to unburden ourselves from that. Parents have already crowdfunded for these HEPA filters by paying our taxes and passing the CARES Act, the CRSSA, and the ARP Act. We've made these funds available to you through our ESSER 1, 2, and 3 funds. As far as I can tell, and this information may be stale, but if it is, I have more. There's $2.8 million yet to be spent of ESSER 2, $3.9 million remaining to be spent of ESSER 3, $9.7 billion of surplus funds in the Alabama Education Trust Fund, and Madison City holds $5 million of ARP funds, which I'd be happy to go ask for you. I'm almost done here. The dust is settled. You now have both the information and the money to do something. And as an ESSER stakeholder, we've been asking for you to look at this, and we've been trying to get this into the budget for a little while now. Parents want you to spend COVID money to address the COVID problem by way of air quality. And I implore you to halt the installation of ionization, which is referred to as part of our HVAC renovations, and adopt one of these proposed HEPA filter plans to meaningfully address the pandemic and keep kids in class. And just to end, it's an airborne virus. It's still here. It killed 900 kids this year so far, and we don't have to live with it, honestly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. King? That concludes public comments, and we will now move into action items. Business action items. Dr. Nichols?
Mr. President, members of the board, I recommend for approval the consent agenda items that contains the following. A, minutes 22-20, August 18th of 2022. Several field trips. B, a field trip request for Heritage Elementary Kindergarten to Lyons Farm in Taft, Tennessee. C, a field trip request for the Liberty Middle School Band to the Festival Disney competition in Orlando. D, a field trip request for the Liberty Middle School students to attend the Science Olympiad in Marietta, Georgia and Johns Creek, Georgia. And E, a field trip for the James Clement High School cheerleaders to attend the National Cheer Competition, Orlando. F, a trip for the Bob Jones High School Air Force JROTC to attend the Raider Team competition in Ottawa, Tennessee. And then finally, G, an agreement by and between the City of Madison Board of Education and Cintas for our employee uniforms as described in the agreement.
Board Dr. Nichols recommends approval of the consent agenda items that contain A through G. Can I have a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Lessmann and a second by Mr. Newberry. All those in favor of the consent agenda items A through G, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Consent agenda passes. Dr. Nichols.
Mr. President, members of the board, I recommend for approval an agreement by and between the City of Madison Board of Education, Huffton Mifflin Harcourt Publishing Company provide professional learning and publications for the date of the signed contract June 30th through June 30th, 2025, for a total cost of $241,980.36.
Board, the superintendent recommends approval of an agreement by and between the City of Madison Board of Education and Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Publishing Company. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Newberry and a second by Ms. Lessmann. Discussion?
Mr. President, members of the board, this is a 3-year partnership. HMH will come, take the Alabama course of study that we have and work with our team to do pre and post-test assessments so that we have common rubrics across the subjects that are based on the Alabama course of study. Once those common pacing calendars, and they help us to unwrap those standards. In the second year, they help to develop those unit plans. And then the third year to complete and make sure that our common pre and post assessments are accurate. By doing the 3-year, we save $80,000 in the contract. Their total work for us is to be the liaison to work with our staff. Our staff are the ones who teach and provide them what will be taught, but this helps to make sure across the schools that we're in a common pattern of teaching the same subject matter. Students move from one school to another, but also that we have assessments that we can look at and how they relate to the state assessments that we have, and that we can align those to make sure that the assessments are accurately depicting the work that students are doing in the class. Dr. Donaldson, you are more than welcome to add into that.
Board, if you recall, we went over this, the financial aspects and some of the definition and implementation of it at our last finance meeting, and Dr. Donaldson shared with us there. Do you have additional questions or clarification needed?
Was this just for secondary? Okay.
And also, not only do you want to do the rubric and assessments in, you want to do your assessments and alignments vertically and horizontally. You want to make sure that your students, as they exit a grade, that the material that has been covered, has been covered, that they need to be successful as they go to the next grade. But you also want that alignment within the school from teacher to teacher within the grade. And so this is just another added step for our staff to be able to make sure that's happening and working with our teachers in the development of those lessons.
I know we've had discussion before, and unfortunately, due to the state changing the assessments every year for the last several years, we don't even know enough to have this discussion right now. But we have often had the discussion where we'd see a learning loss in let's say 7th grade or 8th grade. It typically was a middle school grade, and I can remember you going through data before, Dr. Donaldson, and pointing out that it's possible, and I can't remember if this was in a transition year or not, but that maybe even the assessment wasn't necessarily aligned with the state course of study for a particular instance. And while that maybe not, this doesn't directly address that type of possible nuance, it goes a long way in at least aligning. We can't necessarily control the tests that are grading our adherence to the state course of study, but we can at least make a big step towards making sure what we're teaching does align with the state course of study. Is that correct?
And also, Mr. President, members of the board, you think about the fact that you have 100 new teachers that come in. This helps you to make sure that they understand the alignment, especially a new teacher that comes right out of college that you hire, that helps them to understand the rigor and expectation that you want and the alignment of the state curriculum. Some universities do better at teaching those to students that are in the education program, and some don't. And so this helps us to make sure and that we can get them into the pattern of the rigor and of the course of study. If they're from outside the state, it's even twice as much to understand what the course of study is and what they need to address and the time frame they need to do that. Now, they still have the flexibility to teach. Don't take me wrong. Teachers have that flexibility. But we want to make sure that those overarching units are covered and that the material is covered that we know needs to be there. And then as we go back and take these state assessments, we can look at where those gaps are and adjust those units and rubrics to make sure we're not missing those.
And the idea is sort of a train the trainer, right? With the 3-year agreement is to they come in and they work with us and implement this alignment, and then we continue to carry that forward as possibly even things change. We'll understand their process and how they've aligned issues.
Yeah, HMH does not give us a course of study. The state provides that. They're just facilitating our teachers being together and working on making sure that we have that vertical and horizontal alignment. They're just the facilitators. They don't provide any of that. They just help us to bring our folks together and facilitate those conversations that help us to do that. And we have teachers across the district. There are many teachers who do pre and post tests. Not every teacher does that. What could we gain from that? We have teachers who have been teaching a long time. They have an excellent rubric, but maybe that's not the case with a new person that comes in. And so by bringing our folks together, then we get a better opportunity as a district to review what's happening and what those units look like. But we also get a better opportunity professional development wise of how we embed that to support those areas where we need to.
Dr. Nichols, can you speak to the background of the people that's going to be coming in, providing that service?
Most of the folks are from Alabama, I believe, and Dr. Donaldson can speak to this more. They've been curriculum directors in school districts. She mentioned the other day they might let a superintendent in. I probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably keep those people away. But classroom instruction, they've worked to put a group together that comes in. And again, they're not creating the room. They're just helping your teachers to sit down and have the conversations to talk about what the best model would look like so we have that consistency.
It seems like they're, from the agreement, that they're very, I mean, we're moving that way anyway, very data oriented, right? They're teaching us what data to gather, how to evaluate that and use that data to inform our process going forward. Is that about sort of part of what they're doing?
In secondary, you have less data than you do. The ACT, you don't get a lot of data back to be able to adjust your instruction. And then this is an opportunity for us to have our teachers equipped with common assessment so they can work in the curriculum, be discussing where students are struggling, maybe where as a teacher, I can share with my colleague, this is what worked really well with my students to teach this concept. If we had common assessment, it's much easier for us to do.
Anything else? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Dr. Nichols.
Mr. President, members of the board, I recommend for approval the 2023 Madison City Schools Capital Plan.
Board, the superintendent recommends approval of the 2023 Madison City Schools Capital Plan. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Cummings and a second by Ms. Lessmann. Any further discussion, board? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Dr. Nichols.
Mr. President, members of the board, I recommend for approval the Madison City Schools Strategic Plan.
Board, the superintendent recommends approval of the Madison City Schools Strategic Plan. Can I have a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
A motion by Ms. Lessmann and a second by Mr. Newberry. Discussion?
Mr. President, members of the board, I'm glad to bring you this. Our team, and we've had a lot of input, as the board remembers. We started this process back last year. We reached out to stakeholders with surveys, community stakeholders, student stakeholders, parent stakeholders, teachers and staff stakeholders, gathered a group of representatives together to look at all that data, went through several rewrites. I had a work session with you, took your input that you gave us. One of the things that I feel best about is that, kind of like the capital plan, I kind of feel like Mr. Gunner over there, is that this plan is something that we can adopt and change as we move along. There are many goals in here that the staff have put in place through the feedback that we've gotten. As we move through some of these, there are dates for us to bring to you updates, which is probably one of the best things I like about it, that on a regular basis, the board gets updates on where we are in the academic goals, where we are in special services, where we are in operations, communication, support services, technology. But at the same time, as we move out of certain action plans, there's always something new that comes up that we want to add, and there's nothing that prohibits us from putting those in place. And so I just would, first of all, I want to thank Dr. Donaldson, who has done a tremendous amount of work of reining us all in. That's probably the best way to put it. And Summer, who reined in folks to serve and give feedback and helped us with the surveys. But I also appreciate all of our team and you, the board, that came and helped us to do that and look at that. And I'm excited about us taking this roadmap and moving forward with it. I think that anytime you can have that plan, I don't think it's too big. You know, I know all of you and I have served in businesses, and we've had a notebook. I still remember one. It was about this thick. That was the 2020 plan that was created in 2010. And I don't think anybody ever looked at it until they got to 2020 and decided they needed a new plan. Our goal was to keep this streamlined so that it was something that we could look at each day as we talk and work through items and continue the process of making a great school system even better to do that. And so I just appreciate our entire staff for the work they've put into that.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols. Board?
Dr. Nichols, thank you for all the hard work on this. I know it was a very labor-intensive process. By design, it has to be this thorough and to cover this many areas. But congratulate you again on the leadership of this and working with all the stakeholders. I know it was staff members, and it was central office members, it was students, it was parents, leaders in the community. And I do appreciate the aspect of the scheduled updates that everyone will be able to get. And there's a timeline and there's an accountability there to know that you'll be covering those, and the fact that it is fluid. You know, any good plan is fluid. You can't just situations change. You have to be able to adapt. So I just again congratulate you and your team. I know it wasn't just you; a lot of people involved in this, but congratulate you on all the hard work you put into this.
Well, I'll just tell you the most fun I had in it, which is hard to say on building a strategic plan that you can say the word fun, but was that I had 40 students. And we took the student surveys and took 20 from each high school, a cross section of students, and spent about a half a day with them looking at the data. And so when we look at this, they had input on it. And that was exciting to talk to them and to get their feedback. And so that probably was the most fun that I had in the process. I like the process. I'm a little weird. I like to create strategic plans, and I like to work on them once I get them done. But the kids were, anytime you can sit down with kids and talk to kids, you find out a lot of the best stuff about what's going on. So thank you, Mr. Olson.
Board, I'd like to point out that, as you know, all this is coming together at the right time. Tonight we're looking at the budget, we're looking at the capital plan, we're looking at the strategic plan. We're doing the superintendent evaluation. In the superintendent's contract, we rate on goals every year that the annual goals that are set, and I believe assuming this passes and goes through tonight, that obviously those goals, and it's even stated they have to align with the strategic plan. That said, the entire strategic plan is obviously not, the 2022, 2023 goals. And so, I'd like you, again, assuming this passes tonight, that you take some time and you look at that, and we have discussions, and highlight a handful of those that we really want to formally assign as goals for the coming year. Any other discussion? As you said, we had a work session on it, and we had a lot of good discussion there, and we appreciate you putting in the changes. And if there's nothing further, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes.
You can smile, Dr. Donaldson.
Excellent. Now, let's see. Do you bring this forward?
Mr. President, it's time for the board to nominate one of its members as a candidate for the Alabama Association of School Boards District 9 Director. So I now, since we're not electing a president, I'll turn it over to you, and you can handle all the nominations.
Board, as you know, our association, the AASB, the current director out of Huntsville City, Beth Wilder, has fulfilled her 2 terms that she's allowed to serve, and AASB is looking for nominees to serve as the District 9 Director, which we are a part of. And so I would like to open the floor to nominations from. We would obviously like to have a Madison City person in that seat if we could before Connie Spears has served for us. So I'd like to open up the floor for nominations from this board.
I would like to nominate Miss Alice Lessmann to the District 9 to apply for the District 9 Director position.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Any other nominations, board? Then I will close the nominations. And what's the term? Is it acclamation or? Yeah, that we'll nominate Miss Alice Lessmann to be a candidate for the AASB District 9 Director by acclamation. Congratulations, Ms. Lessmann.
Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Dr. Nichols, personnel actions.
Mr. President, members of the board, I recommend for approval a list of substitutes for Madison City Schools.
Board, Dr. Nichols recommends the list of substitutes for Madison City Schools. Can I have a motion and a second?
So move.
Second. A motion by Ms. Lessmann and a second by Mr. Cummings. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Dr. Nichols.
Mr. President, members of the board, I recommend for approval of your supplemental contract work to be performed for Madison City Schools.
Board, the superintendent recommends approval of the supplemental contracts that you have before you. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Newberry and a second by Ms. Lessmann. Any discussion, board?
Mr. President, members of the board, pretty standard supplemental contracts. I would make note just because I think what we do as a district is important. There are several mentors on here
I noted
for our National Board Certified Teachers, and I go back to what Ms. Williams said earlier, that of all the school districts in the state, we have the 3rd most. Now, I'm gonna take out the first one. Who was the first one, Jefferson or Baldwin or somebody? They only have about 40,000 people down there, so. But I think there's a lot to be said for the fact of the number of National Board Certified Teachers that we have, and the work that goes on with Cindy behind the scenes, and the work that goes on to have mentors. It's a very rigorous process, and so I applaud our district for working and utilizing and helping support folks who've gone through it to turn around and be mentors for those that are going through the process. And so I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but there's about 40, Dr. Donaldson, I think I'm right, in the queue that could roll out and get that finished. And then Cindy had several meetings, and we had over 60 interested. So, it takes more than the short term to get that done. So, but we have 100 in that group, and that are potential to get that done here in the next few years. So.
Yes, and I applaud those that sign up to mentor. I mean, it's obviously a very rigorous process, and these teachers are not having to do it on their own. So thanks to all those that are leading by serving their fellow teachers. Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Dr. Nichols.
Mr. President, members of the board, I recommend for your approval the remainder of the personnel actions. I can't get that out tonight, as presented to you.
Board, the superintendent recommends approval of the personnel actions that are before you. Can these all be taken as a group? With the group fine, can I have a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Lessmann and a second by Mr. Cummings. Any discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Personnel actions pass. Dr. Nichols, are there any personnel actions you need to call attention to this evening?
Not tonight, Mr. President.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That, I believe, that concludes personnel actions. And we will now move into the superintendent's evaluation section of the meeting. Let me get my papers. There we go. So as I alluded to earlier, in Dr. Nichols' contract and in the contract of every superintendent, I'm sure probably throughout the history of this district, but certainly my tenure here, Mr. Sanderson could confirm that it's probably throughout the history of this district that we have a section in there that talks about an annual evaluation of the superintendent, and we have a rubric that we grade to, and there's also a staff rubric, and we have the establishment of the goals as we talked about, and so I have asked each of you to provide me with feedback on that, and I have with the great help of Ms. King, I should quit saying I so much, have been able to put this together so we can review it together, and board, you obviously know your own feedback, and I believe you've seen the staff's feedback, but you might not have seen the entire board's feedback at once. So we'll go ahead and step through this. You saw several of these items on the budget presentation because they are 2021-2022 major accomplishments. We are ranked number 2 public school system by Niche. All MCS schools, all Madison City schools are in the top 10. So what that means is all your elementary schools are somewhere between 1 and 10. All your secondary, your middle school is broken out separately. Is that correct, Dr. Dawson? So all your middle schools are ranked between in the top 10, and all your high schools are comparatively in the top 10. So that's an excellent place to be. This year, through a Herculean effort of many of our personnel, and certainly of Dr. Donaldson under Dr. Nichols' direction, we achieved Cognia accreditation for the next time period. Are those 5 years? 5-year time periods? And we received all 3s and 4s. And probably more important than that were their glowing reviews in the outbrief, and how they had many great things to say about the community, and how the community supported the school system, and how the school system supported the students. And so that's certainly noteworthy. As we just pointed out, Madison City Schools is a state leader in MBCT certification, and we're growing that every year. Very happy that this past year we saw the rise in need of mental health awareness, and we have already prioritized that and have increased staffing in our mental health support here in the school system. One of the gems in the program, and another thing, Dr. Nichols, you talked about things that are fun. I believe you had a lot of fun with the welding program, and while we are overwhelmingly a college prep town and a college prep school system, we are a large school system, and just because I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but just because 80%, 90% go to college, I mean, that leaves, if you have 12,000 students, that leaves a lot of students who are going into the military or straight into the workforce. And so it has always weighed on this board, regardless of the makeup of the board, that we need to attend to those students just as well as any others. And so it's very exciting that we added the welding program this last year. And I imagine that there's always probably going to be a waiting list on that. As we expand that, it will need to continue to be expanded.
Yes, sir.
And yes, the process of bringing the community together and with tonight's vote, developing and then installing the Madison City Schools strategic plan, a list of very good accomplishments for 21 and 22. The evaluation performance range for the board. And this is something that I've brought up with some of you, maybe all of you already, that we need to align with the staff. The staff grades out of a 1 through 4. We have graded out of a 1 through 5, and just for our own comparison going forward, I think that we need to align those two. But here is for the public. Here's the evaluation range. We range from 1 of unsatisfactory, 2 needs improvements. You see the definitions there beside. 3 is satisfactory and meets expectations. 4 is above average and exceeds expectations, and 5 demonstrates excellence. We also have a column. There are some items that maybe the board members don't actually observe, and so we do have a not observed choice there. Next slide, please. So the superintendent's evaluation composite is broken into 10 sections that range from CEO functions, educational leadership, personnel management, community relations, pupil personnel services, interpersonal relations, professional development, technology management, facilities management, and financial management. And you can see the composite scores from each of the board members are rolled up on the side for an average in all categories of 3.95, which is just a hair below above average, exceeds expectations, and well above a satisfactory and meets expectations. So a very high overall rating of 3.95. Then on the next slide, if you take that and you look at the actual 5 goals that we set this time last year, the 2021-2022 goals. So lead and coordinate a new 5-year strategic plan for the school district. Great job on that. And obviously, when you started that process, there was still a lot of uncertainty and difficulty in meetings, and so we appreciate you and your staff persevering through that. The personnel management, review and communicate with the Board of Education the current status of recruiting, retaining, and hiring. This has continued to get better under your leadership and the leadership of your executive team, which is by no accident. This is an area that as we've gone from a small school system to a large school system has had to really become, has to become more trackable, more reportable, more documentation, and you have a score of 4.25 there as exceeds expectations in growing that. Community relations, develop a monthly presentation of departments to inform and update the board and community on current data plans. We have presentations like tonight that show how you're reviewing that information and bringing it to the public. Management of pupil personnel. This is an interesting one. It was a very explicit goal of coordinating with the Director of Transportation the effective integration of the EduLog routing system for the 2022-2023 school year. This stems from a several year history in the transportation department of we had some technology available to us, or so we thought, that would more, again, small system to large system, would modernize how we were doing transportation, how we were planning routes and assigning drivers to those and making sure we're covering the whole area. While you still scored a 4 on this, what we realized through the year is and I may have the wording not exactly correct, but the EduLog system actually didn't mate up with the other new technology we had, but still great strides were made in that. The software that allows that we did install the GPS systems, the software that allows parents to track bus movements is used by 6,000 maybe or so parents across the district. And so while the actual goal was something that was not achievable with that software, that was realized, it was compensated for, and not just dropped on the floor. There is other software being looked at to help us do what we ultimately, what the goal was, is to modernize the transportation department. Yes, and we're still working towards that. And professional development. Dr. Nichols is a member of L35. I don't know that that's the best class ever. But
That's the best class ever.
I don't know. But and also participates in programs sponsored by the State Superintendents Association and the Alabama Association of School Boards, and has been recently recognized by the national and invited to a forum by the National Superintendents Organization. Is that correct, Dr. Nichols?
Yes, sir.
And so you have a score of 4.75 there. So on all categories of 4.35, again, exceeding expectations. And so I won't read all of these. I even pared down many of these, but I'll just pop through and look at some of these comments from your board members. Demonstrates great school spirit and Madison City Schools pride. One of Dr. Nichols' strengths is his ability to communicate clearly, effectively, and genuinely. He comports himself well with the board and his staff. He's extremely skilled at building relationships in the community. Calm demeanor, exudes confidence, and able to make decisions. Overall, Dr. Nichols performs very well as the CEO. Dr. Nichols is up to date on legislation and policy changes. Dr. Nichols serves very well as the liaison to the community. An area of improvement is more data communication with the board and sharing pre-planning ideas to include the board in the early stages of decision-making. Dr. Nichols has strong problem-solving and decision-making skills. Dr. Nichols evaluates the situation and leans on his executive team for history and context. MCS transportation and food services are tops in the state. Excellent job of using media to encourage staff and creating themes to drive home the goal. Superintendent looks and has extremely professional communication and interpersonal skills. Dr. Nichols has taken a very active role in working to not only recruit and attract new teachers and staff to MCS, but also to make sure that our system is doing all that it can to retain our current staff by providing a positive work environment. His leadership on working to go above and beyond the new step raise schedule and staff recently enacted demonstrated his commitment to making sure our teachers and staff are taken care of from a compensation level. MCS has excellent and informative social media. The superintendent is a great public speaker, and especially with other events that are going on tonight that we'll talk about in a minute. I figured I'd read the entire last comment. I feel that Dr. Nichols excels in executive leadership, decision-making, strategic planning, and communication. Dr. Nichols came into his position as superintendent of Madison City Schools with a lot of administrative experience in a neighboring system. I think it has been good for MCS to have a leader with an exposure to a different way of doing things. As strong a system as MCS is, all good organizations thrive long-term while continuing to adapt and innovate. I think Dr. Nichols has done a good job of embracing all the strengths and successes of MCS while looking for opportunities to make things even better. He has a true passion for his job. He loves our students and is continually looking for ways to provide them better opportunities. He has a vision for the future that involves meeting the needs of our students and staff as the system continues to grow and evolve based on the growth of our city, and he has a true skill for developing plans to achieve that vision. I believe that Dr. Nichols is an excellent fit for MCS, and as a board member, I've enjoyed working with him in our shared goal of providing the highest quality education possible for our children. So, as you can see, the superintendent evaluation is another really good year, another very good year. Great accomplishments, great job of working with the board, and being the face and name of the district, and understanding that when you reach out to the community in all your platforms, that your words have lots of meaning and carry lots of weight. And as shown here in the evaluation, the board greatly appreciates that. So with that, it doesn't necessarily line up this way every year, but this year it also lines up with a superintendent's contract. Dr. Nichols was hired by this board and began in June of 2020, and his original contract is scheduled to run through June of 23. We notified Dr. Nichols in June of this year, June of 22, that we intended to renegotiate his contract for a period going forward. And I'd like to turn it over now, if it's okay with Mr. Cummings, to I appointed Mr. Cummings kind of head of the contract renewal process. And if Mr. Cummings, if you'll just share with what that process was and where we are now.
Okay. So I will say Madison City Schools has been one of the best performing school systems in the state for many years. And if we really look at it, we can really say over 2 decades. This accomplishment and success of the school system is no longer a desire. It's an expectation from the community and the stakeholders. Even going through a pandemic, there is an expectation to demand the system would do well. With that demand and pressure and expectation is one of the reasons why the board has encouraged the superintendent to evaluate the salary schedule for all Madison Board of Education employees. There have been adjustments made along the way. With this goal and salary adjustment in mind, and the salary adjustment made at the state level, we considered our own superintendent's salary position. Currently, the Madison City Superintendent is ranked 17th in the state when it comes to salary, which is much lower than other systems we are compared and perform against. We're proposing a salary increase to move the superintendent to 10th in the state, which would finally put the Madison City Superintendent position amongst top 10 superintendents in the state. This will bring the superintendent closer to matching the academic performance of the school system as compared to the other systems across the state. And finally, I want to thank this board for always being supportive of recommendations the superintendent brings to the board when it comes to providing growth and leadership opportunities for the teachers and staff. And I also want to thank Dr. Nichols for him and his central office team. When the state made a salary adjustment, he quickly became proactive to come up with a competitive salary schedule for our staff and brought it to the board for approval. So in working with our salary schedule and communicating with the board members, there was a desire to move this position that we know has a lot of pressure and a lot of demand and a lot of expectations, to at least be in the top 10 of the state, coming close to the performance that the system has been achieving for many years.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. And so another noteworthy aspect of the proposed contract is that the term will extend through June 30th, 2025, and this board will have to notify Dr. Nichols in June of 2024 what it intends to do going forward. So at this point, I need to call for a motion and a second to offer the contract to Dr. Nichols. Is that correct, Mr. Sanderson? Board, you have all reviewed the information, and you helped Mr. Cummings put this contract together. And I ask now that I have a motion and a second to move forward with the contract renewal with Dr. Nichols.
So move.
Second.
Excuse me. A motion by Mr. Cummings and a second by Ms. Lessmann. Any further discussion, board? With none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the superintendent contract offer, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Contract passes. Dr. Nichols, Superintendent Comments.
Well, Mr. President, I'm not sure what to follow all that with. So, you know, first of all, let me follow it by saying that anything that the board put down that are successes for this school district have far less to do with the superintendent, which he probably shouldn't say after you just gave him a contract, and a lot more to do with the people sitting in this room. And when I say that, I actually mean all the people in this room and who they represent. We have a great community. We have great, as my daddy used to say, great mamas and papas. And we have great kids. And we have a great staff. We have a supportive community leaders. And we have excellent administrators. And we have a tremendous board. And we've had it for a long time. We've been blessed. And I can assure you that when a report comes out and talks about this school district, I do agree with Mr. Cummins. It is no longer a desire, it's an expectation. And our staff feels that. We all do. Our community feels that way. So if there's one thing the superintendent, he's got a lot he's going to say, but one thing he would say about all that is, when Ms. King retires, I'm going, because y'all gonna find out who really has been taking care of this place, okay? So Dr. Fowler left before that happened, Mr. Parker left, Dr. Clark left, and Dr. Nichols no fool either, I'm just gonna tell you. First of all, Ms. King is the heartbeat of all of us. And then our executive team. I've said this, I have never in my career, ever, and I never will, work with a group of individuals who are as dedicated and hardworking and humble. You know, there are books out there. Peter Lencioni wrote a book about silos in the business world. Not in this place. Nobody feels that way. Everybody jumps in. Everybody helps. Nobody gets territorial. Everybody supports each other. Everybody checks their ego at the door. They're all free and willing to tell the superintendent he's wrong, and they do. And he's good with that, because I appreciate the comment that probably you said, that other than loving where I am, being glad to be here, having roots and being here. The comment you read, Mr. Holcamp, about relying on my executive team probably makes me as happy as any evaluation I could have, because I truly believe we all are a team, and that we have a great team. Work together. That includes all of the folks in this room, mamas and daddies and boards and everybody. It's all of us. And there's challenges. We've had challenges. But even in those challenges, we're focused together. And so I would certainly be remiss if I didn't thank Mr. Terrell. He puts out the fires every day. Sometimes I help when they're really big. But somebody is out there. You know, there's a lot of things I get to do as superintendent, and work with the city and work with the legislature, work with the board. And those are lots of things. But there's those day-to-day issues that have to be taken care of and handled. And I tell him all the time, we're brothers from another mother, because I don't know if I've ever worked with anybody that we think so much alike, and take care. I hope I take care of him half as much as he takes care of me. I'm just going to tell you. So I appreciate it. I will work hard to improve my performance. I try to do that every year. It's my goal. I think I should do that. I certainly appreciate the opportunity, and I did in 2020 to come and be here. I felt that at that moment, and I've said it before, that the good Lord led me here. I believe when I prayed hard about it, this was the place. I remember driving down 565 one night, coming home from an interview in Tennessee. That was not the place. It was a great place, by the way, in case somebody's watching out there. I don't want to think I didn't like them. But it wasn't the place that I thought that I was supposed to land. And I'll be truthful, and I've said this. When I retired in 2016, I didn't think I'd ever be back here. But But that changed too. Somebody else had a plan about that. And so I certainly appreciate the opportunity to continue and be here the next 3 years. I love our kids. I probably need to get better at a lot of things, but there's one thing that I love the people I work with, and I love our kids. And so I appreciate the opportunity to get to do that. Other comments, I can't say enough about our capital plan work, our strategic plan work, and our budget work. Ms. Williams just loves all that, and Mr. Gunner and Mr. Jones and Dr. Donaldson and Mr. Terrell and all the staff members that put that together. So I certainly appreciate that. Next week is Spirit Week, little rivalry week going on, in case anybody doesn't know that. And that's a good thing. Let me tell you, we have a good rivalry. You know, and I credit that with when we opened James Clemens, and Dr. Fowler used to say, we may be two schools, but we're one system. And I think that's permeated. We're going to have a great rivalry. We're going to have a lot of fun. Lee Shaw has worked extremely hard to give us a fun week. I think Culver's one night is the Bob Jones night. Maybe that's Monday. And Culver's on Wednesday is the James Clemens night. Tuesday night's Trash Panda Stadium night. Madison, I'm going to throw out the first pitch. That ought to be exciting. I think I can still do it. Sprocket's been around helping the car lines in the morning. Lee Shaw has worked extremely hard to give us all an incredible spirited week next week. And I hope we take and have fun with it. I hope we enjoy it. My second podcast will come out. Mr. Peck said I've done a lot of things in my career, and at this point I'm doing a podcast. Last week we talked to the band directors. This week we talked to our teachers of the year, and what a great job they do for us in ROTC and our media center at Madison Elementary. And so I look forward to that. And then, of course, we'll get the football coaches in there. We're going to get them to have a little time to talk. But we also got a whole list, Rachel and Russell. I call them the 2 R's. They're so excited, and they have put together about the next 6 months of podcast ideas. So I just do what they tell me. I'm just going to tell you. And we also are working on a community newsletter, you know, something we started a few years ago. And if you gave me high points on writing something, Dr. Donaldson does most of it. I'm just going to be honest. I throw out an idea, but she and Ms. King, you know, they kind of put it all together. Mr. Peck, they get together and start tossing ideas around for what we'll tell parents each week on an update. But one of our goals is to also do that for our community that don't have children in the school district, and to push it out through our business community. I was with the Huntsville-Madison Chamber today, went to part of their board of directors meeting, and then last week was with the Madison Chamber, trying to work with them and make sure as they promote, the Huntsville-Madison's doing strategic promotions for Huntsville, that we're part of that. And I always remind them we're the Madison part of that Huntsville-Madison. Don't forget that. And so, you know, being able to work with them and be able to let citizens without children in the school district know the successes that are going on in their school district. And so we've got a plan to do that. Finally, I'll say Officer Parrish is here with us, and we certainly appreciate our SROs and what they mean to us and the work that they do. And then I have to recognize each of you. I received a letter from Sally Smith, the Executive Director of the Alabama Association of School Boards, recognizing you all for your work in completing School Governance Improvement Act training. So Ms. Lessmann, congratulations on your completion of that.
Thank you.
And Mr. Halsey, I can start separating all these. Get tied up. There we go, sir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Cummings.
Thank
you. And Mr. Holcamp. And Mr. Newberry's new, so he doesn't have one yet. But I'll tell Mr. Newberry like Mr. Cummings said. It's an expectation that our board members do that. So no pressure for you there, Mr. Newberry, but just want to lay that out for you. Everybody's got it around here, so we just share it freely. But you know, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad that I get this opportunity to work with great people and work in a great community. And we're going to have fun every day. We're going to laugh. Miss King, my job sometimes just make Miss King laugh. You know, board secretary has a lot going on. She's spinning lots of plates all the time for all of us. And so sometimes I just have to sing a little bit to her. And She sings back. She sings back. That's right. So, thank you very much. I don't just be quiet and go on. That's what I'm gonna do.
Well, I think the board will allow you to speak again as we go forward. We're going to change it up a little bit tonight. First, before I go into that, I would also like to thank SRO Paris and Ms. Denzing. We thank you for your support. Absolutely. So Mr. Halsey tipped his hand last board meeting that unfortunately for this board, it's his last called board meeting. I've learned through the years that you need to define that this is the last called board meeting in the month of August. You never know what might happen. Mr. Halsey has an opportunity to return to Birmingham, and it's a good fit for he and his family, and so he's serving with us tonight, and we're so happy to get through the strategic plan and the capital plan and Dr. Nichols' contract extension and the budgeting process. We're so happy to get through that with you. You've served during, I would dare say, the most difficult time to serve on a school board in Madison City, maybe anywhere, but certainly in Madison City. We've been through a lot in the last 3 years, and we absolutely appreciate your service and wish nothing but blessings and future accomplishments for you ahead. I've got a few items here. I'll let you go through it, but I just want to thank you so much for your service and best of luck. Thank you. And I'll let you decide. Would you like to hear from the panel first, or would you like to say a few words?
I'll go last.
All right. Floor's open.
We're not used to that, Mr. President. I will say it's been another outstanding night. Councilwoman Denzing, thank you for coming. Your family is in our prayers. We're thinking about you. But thank you for continuing to always support this system. I will say that Mr. Holcamp, Mr. Halsey, it has been a pleasure working with you. And as the president stated, this was some difficult times here. And I know we have had great conversations and we have had great accomplishments. And it's all been for the success of this system. Thank you.
I guess I'll go next.
You guys really do perform better if I call you.
I did want to say that this is, I am the new guy, right? So this is by far the longest board meeting we've had. I wanted to thank there was a lot of presentations, a lot of work went into the strategic plan, the budget hearing, the capital plan. So thank you everybody that put that together. I know it's been a lot of work over weeks, months, and years. So thank you. I did want to mention Dr. Nichols. As the new guy, I went to orientation about a month ago. One of the things that they stress in orientation is the different roles and responsibilities between a board member and a superintendent. And successful school districts have superintendents and boards that work as a team. And I wanted to say, I'm glad you're on our team. I'm glad to be on a team with you. And so, speaking of that, Mr. Halsey, I feel like I barely got to know you, but in my short time here, I do want to say I appreciate your inputs. Your insights has made things better. The ideas you bring forth has made us as a board and the Madison City Schools as a whole better. And so you will be missed. So.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry.
Well, I guess it's my turn. Like Mr. Newberry said, thank you all for your presentations. I know that took a lot of time and effort. And the EL camp, I have to start, that really is fun. I was wondering if you remember, Mr. Cummings, we got to play a game, and I think it had to do with coding, and I was just following what the kids told me. But I know we finished ours first, so I had to put that in there. But it was a lot of fun. It's almost like, oh, we're learning, but we're playing. So thank you for those presentations. I also wanted to say congratulations to Mr. Cummings for his being accepted to L36, the Leadership Greater Huntsville flagship class, which is very competitive to get into. I think they said they had over 120 applications, and they have 54 class members. So he's just now started his kickoff. We've got a little group of us that's gone through, and that's some exciting times. So congratulations. I wanted to say congratulations to Dr. Nichols. You get to stay with us, and we're happy. You know, I love the theme because, you know, Mr. Newberry said he's glad that to have known you. Well, and I'm glad to be here, and we're glad you're here. So we're very blessed to have you. So thank you. And then Mr. Holsey, we've had, I mean, not a whole lot of time together, but we've learned some things together, because I know you stepped into, I think right after you got on the board, just things shut down. So your focus was probably more on that. So when I came in, I know we learned some things together, and it was really good to have that. You bring a different perspective, and you always jump in where needed, as evidenced by you subbing, even though he brought his daughter in there. So.
I made the smart
There
move.
might be a little cheat there, but we're glad to have known you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. You know, being the superintendent, you get the opportunity to talk to the board members. A lot of times phone calls, and you don't have all the answers. You're looking for feedback to try to make a decision sometimes, a lot of times. And, you know, the most important thing any team can have is when you're having those conversations, that there's trust there to happen, that they're open. And we're blessed to have a board that does that. And you have been vital in that. I've never once that I can recall ever that we didn't have a conversation, and it was a give and take of ideas and questions. And that has been a rich, valuable resource. And I think it just says a lot. Hey, you're smart enough to get your daughter to come help you. That was good. If I'd have been smart, I'd have found mine to come help me too. But willingness, as this whole board is, willingness to dive in and do that. You know, that says a lot about this board, and it says a lot when you did it about you and your commitment to, as the new strategic plan says, all students. And you have looked out for all of them. And I think that's the greatest compliment, that when somebody's on a school board, that they look out for all kids. And you have sincerely done that from your heart. It's been a blessing to serve with you.
Thank you.
You have the
So
floor, Mr.
now I'm up. Dr. Nichols, I want to thank you for giving us a short agenda tonight for my last meeting. I appreciate it. But in all seriousness, it was an outstanding agenda. And again, thank you for all the presentations. As Ms. Lessmann said, it's very informative and detailing all the hard work that goes into running the system, you know, from budgets to capital planning to strategic planning. There's so much involved. And so thank you all for sharing the information tonight. It's been a very emotional week for me, so I apologize in advance if I get emotional. I have my handkerchief just in case. You know, normally when we kind of have this part of someone moving on, they're rolling off. And, you know, I'm not rolling off. I have resigned, as Mr. Holtkamp said, due to a professional opportunity back in Birmingham, which is where we came here from. And as he said, it's a very good fit for our family. So we felt it was our best interest to pursue that at this time. So that's why we're doing this. So unfortunately, that means I only get to serve 3 of my 5 years, which I do regret that I wasn't able to do a full term. But I'm thankful for the time I had. I want to say a few thank yous. First, I want to thank God for just giving me this opportunity to be part of such a great team and a great system. I want to thank my family, Tara, Ainsley, and Haley, for allowing me to make the time to do this, because it is a time commitment, as they'll all tell you. Nobody's complaining about it, but it's a big time commitment, and it's time away from your family. So I appreciate them and their understanding. I want to thank the Madison City Council, the council that appointed me to the board in the first place in 2019, and then the current board, especially including Ms. Dinsley, for all your support you give the school system. I thank them for putting their trust in me to be part of this board. And then I want to thank our current board members, Mr. Newberry, Mr. Holtkamp, Mr. Cummings, Ms. Lessmann, the two former board members that I worked with, Ms. Bartlett and Mr. Ferrer, and then the two great superintendents I had the opportunity to work with, Dr. Nichols and Mr. Robbie Parker. And Dr. Nichols stole my thunder. The last person I was going to thank on an individual level was the person who runs this place, which is Ms. King. So thank you for all the support you've given me and advice you've given me, over the years. So he's right. She's the glue that holds everything together around here. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, I forgot. I think Mr. Cummings mentioned it. When I got appointed in 2019, the last thing I expected was a global pandemic to come 9 months later that, pretty much truly changed our world and changed how this board had to function. So yeah, now that I'm leaving now that we're getting past that and get back to all the fun stuff. So I hate that, we actually have people in the meeting, our students couldn't do presentations. That's the best part of a board meeting, is when you get a student presentation and a student recognition. So I hate that I'm going to miss out on that, and it's not coming back together. Until if you're not a part of the board, I just don't know that you can truly appreciate all the hard work that takes place to run a school system. We have a lot of parent involvement, and every strong system needs parent involvement. And as a parent, you think what's going on, and you think there's a better way to do that. But until you get into the weeds with everyone, working day in and day out on how to run a system like this, you cannot appreciate all that goes into it. And all that starts with everyone sitting out here. I'm not going to start naming individuals now because I'll leave somebody out. But I just want to say the administrative team. Thank you for all you do. Your hard work day in and day out, your dedication to the students, our teachers, all of our staff. Like a lot of people in this room, we moved here 6 years ago for work, and we could have lived anywhere in the area, and we chose Madison City for the schools. We came from a strong public school system. I believe in public schools, and we came from a strong public school system, and we felt confident and we felt good when we moved here that our two girls wouldn't be lacking in that area, and that's certainly been the case. That's proven to be true. So I just want to say thank you again to everyone that's an employee of Madison City Schools. Oftentimes your work goes unnoticed, and that's unfortunate because you're so dedicated and so wanting to serve our students and our community. So thank you for everything. When you're a parent, I'm guilty of this. When you're a parent, you kind of think of things from your kid's perspective. You're looking out for your kid. That's just natural. But Mr. Holtkamp and I had a conversation about this, I know at one of the meetings in Montgomery, about, when you serve on the board, you've got to change your perspective. And when you serve on the board, you're not just serving your kids. You're not just serving the kids that look like you or speak your language or have your religion or your political beliefs. You're serving every student. And you should never, and I don't think anybody here has compromised their integrity, but it forces you to think with a different perspective. You've got to think differently than you ever have before, because we have 12,000 plus students, and they all matter. Every one of them matters. So I don't know who will take my place on the board, but my message to them will be, and I'm sure this won't be an issue, think globally. You've got to look out for every student's interest. And sometimes that may mean doing something, again, not compromising your beliefs, but maybe you wouldn't normally thought that way. But when you got to take everyone into account, think about how it affects everyone, you will view things from a different perspective. And I've learned that, and this board excels in that, in truly looking out for everyone. So I just want to say thank you again to everyone for all your friendship and all your work. And I'm only an hour and a half down the road, so I hope, you'll stay in touch. Certainly plan to stay in touch with all of you. And I just can't thank everyone enough for all the opportunities and all the great experiences. Even our COVID meetings were tough sometimes. All in all, it's been a great experience. And so I can't thank everyone enough for all that. So thank you for all your support, and we'll stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holsey. Longest board meeting so far, huh, Mr. Newberry?
Just wait.
Would you like to call one in the morning?
No. Again, thank you, Mr. Holsey, and best wishes to you. As I indicated earlier, our next board meeting will have our second budget hearing in it. It will be September 6th here in this room at 5 p.m. Immediately preceding that, we will have a finance committee meeting at 4 p.m. If there's nothing further, I'll take a motion and a second to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
A motion by Ms.
Come on,
Lessmann.
Mr. Holsey. You
Oh.
I think you backed out on a lot of seconds and motions tonight.
I feel like it was me and Mr. Newberry doing it all
You got to
night.
make the minutes.
Yeah, and second by Mr. Holsey.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear from that end of the table. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? We're adjourned.